It's Tuesday evening, just after 6 o'clock. It's 6:06, 6:08. Apologies for the late start. I'm not quite sure what happened, but anyway, we're ready to go now. This is the spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. I'm Saad in Bromley in southeast London, and with me is Gregory. Gregory, how are you doing?
Hello.
Welcome. Good. In Bromley, it is overcast. I think slightly windy, and today was warm, 20 degrees. I guess you are in Brussels as usual?
Yes, it is warm here and getting very sunny right now.
Sunny, okay. We had sun actually. You reminded me there was sunshine here as well, but right now it's overcast. So yes, so I know we normally have very similar weather. So welcome listeners to the program. As I said, it's a spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abrusheen. And we have a new topic every week. Tonight's topic is man and the environment. Man and the environment. You're very welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And our if you're calling from abroad, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abrusheen is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world knowledge, a world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Abrusheen. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. the word of the Grail Message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. Dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic we're discussing tonight is man and the environment. And you're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. Gregory, as usual, I looked at the title and looked in the dictionary what the main words or keywords, and get the dictionary meaning from that. So the first word is man, which I think everybody knows what we mean here, and I will just use the more appropriate definition. Man, in fact, it's not very well put in this dictionary. Well, it's not giving quite what I wanted. So it says man, a human being of either sex or a person. But tonight we are meaning man as human beings, not just one human being. So just to say that as mankind, you could say, or humanity, let's say like that. So that's a general term we are using for man. And then the next word, I won't ask you to say anything further on that, Gregory, unless you want to say anything further about the meaning of man, the definition of man.
No, at least we are building up before we.
Yes, I think it's quite straightforward this time. There's not anything controversial about this word. So the next word is environment. And in the dictionary, I found two sort of definitions there. The first one, the surroundings or conditions in which a person, animal, or plant lives or operates. The surroundings or conditions in which a person, animal, or plant lives or operates. I have a second one, Greg, but I don't want to use that just yet. So what do you say about this definition? Is that like relevant to us for our discussion tonight?
Yes, all these bits, they add up.
They all add up. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the second one from the dictionary. It says the natural world. Again, the meaning of environment, the second additional one. The natural world as a whole, or in particular geographical area, especially as affected by human activity. And they give an example, the impact of pesticides on the environment. So, Gregory, anything you'd like to say on that one?
Well, it's not a matter of adding or subtracting, because these are all ways of describing what they mean, though it doesn't seem complete, but it gives an idea of what they mean by environment.
Okay, so, obviously our program is meant to be a spiritual discussion, and in this, what you've read so far, it's all about earthly human activity, or not only earthly human activity, but let's say, but it's earthly. So I just want to clear right from the beginning, Gregory, when we are talking about here in our discussion about environment, will we just focus only on the earthly?
Well, it is it will not be right to focus only on the earthly, because there are other things that have impact on the earthly environment. Therefore, those things can be considered as being as having impact. For instance, on the earthly environment, the moon has impacts on the oceans, and the ocean must be considered as part of the environment. And
Right.
that is why you have the tides. So do we then eliminate the influence or the impact of the moon? Or do we then eliminate the impact of the sun on the environment? These also, they have an impact, and therefore they may be considered.
Yes. Excuse me. So actually, I should have been more clear in my words. When I used the word earthly, I actually thought more than just the earth. I was thinking of you could say the physical universe, uh, but I didn't point it out. So I'm just, or material, maybe that's the way to put it, material universe. And we know in our discussions there's non-material world as well. So, so just to be clear, Gregory, when we talk about environment, are we talking about material world only, or the non-material as well?
No, it is only fair when one discusses both the environment which is perceptible using the five senses physically, and to be more inclusive, the environment which is not perceptible using the five senses, which lie beyond, because that environment also has an impact on the physical environment.
Right. So like it's already widened the whole conception and what we are going to discuss tonight. So yes. So now I think we are clear. Hopefully we've become clearer now what our discussion is going to be about. So let's start about, I mean, the title is Man and the Environment. And so let's see. I mean, this might be like an obvious question. Does man influence the environment?
Of course, man has an influence in the environment because his activities have an impact on the environment. For a very simple instance, when you put up a structure in the physical environment, you must have either taken away that which was there initially, maybe the vegetation, and put up a structure of a house. So you have an impact. Again, where you have the activities of men, where you have a dam being built, which then prevents water from running just like that, and a pool of water, which now form a massive lake. That has an impact on the local environment of which man is in. Therefore, it is right to say that man has an impact on the environment.
Yes, I know it was a bit of an obvious question, so thank you for just giving the example of it. So this environment, this nature has built, you can say, the environment that human beings are living in, the earth and the universe, let's say, nature has brought it about, and man then builds on it. Well, let's talk about the earth so that we can make it easy to understand. So man has built something on this earth, on top of what nature has already been doing. So, and as we know, I mean, I don't want to get too sidetracked right now, but Gregory, in the news we are hearing a lot, pretty much every day now, climate change effects, events, which are a lot of flooding, let's say, even fires, wildfires in forests, dramatic, really dramatic events. They might be, in many cases, just short and sharp, some cases, short and sharp, but when they happen, it's like a massive impact in that whichever area that they hit, because they seem to be, like you're hearing about, flash flooding is happening pretty much in every country. So, which is, you could say, people have said, oh, this is the impact of man's activity, climate change. He's heating up the world, or they've changed. It used to be called global, I've forgotten the exact word now, which is talked about heat, and now they say it can be cold as well. So they just call it climate change. So what I want to say about that. So Gregory, just a general question at the moment. Would you say, Gregory, man should learn from nature to work with nature, or should he work to improve on nature? How should man work on this earth?
Basically, there is a difference between man himself and nature. What is clear is that before anyone can start making changes or improvement, whatever they call it, on a particular environment, it's common sense that first they should understand the operation of this environment. Only when one has a thorough knowledge of this environment, only then can one dare to understand the laws that govern the environment. Then, should there be changes, it will be done in such a way that the environment will not have an adverse effect or an adverse retroactive effect on those who introduce those changes. So the first step will be, or should be, or must be, understanding of the environment or of the nature of the environment.
So, you said I must have understanding of the nature of the environment. So, is that learning, going and making mistakes and learning like that? Or is there a way you can really study nature and, so that what you're going to make or build is going to be, let's say, compatible or, aligned with nature? So my question, Gregory, should we observe and learn, or should it be some, you can somehow study it?
If one does not observe, how can one then draw conclusion? First is to observe, and then in one's observation, which is more of a sort of an investigation, you then collate what one has observed, and for some they do some analysis. Only when they have a fair understanding of that will they start synthesizing, that means integrating things, putting up structures. Otherwise, it becomes almost impossible. A very simple example is when you wish to put up a building structure, it is fair to understand the soil upon which that structure is to stand. Otherwise, the likelihood is that you will put up your structure in shifting sands, like quicksand. And if you hadn't observed it, studied it very carefully, you will find that you put up your structure, before too long, it will be sinking.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I'm just thinking, as the beginning, let's say early man will make small structures and, basically, let's say small structures and not so many of them. But in the world we live today, we make big, massive structures, and because it's a big need of them, there's masses of them. Numbers are much higher now. Let's say cities, you need more things than you need in a village. So, and so, there's a more consumption, there's more, use of the environment, let's say. And I'm just thinking that when that happens, what my point is really, can we observe all these things, when it gets to something a bigger scale? Because when it's a small, it has a smaller impact. When it's something large, it has a larger impact. And as you know, the population of the world has been growing and growing and growing, and cities have been developing, and things are just getting bigger and bigger. So can one really sustain, that's another word, sustainable, can man make sustainable development, and basically with this sort of growth?
It must be, in one's observation, it must be remarked that even in the past, thousands of years ago, in countries or societies like Egypt, they were able to divert the courses of rivers, and they were able to put up the pyramids. These structures are not little. These are massive structures. And therefore, one will say, oh, they started small. The question each person must be asking themselves, from where did they get that knowledge on how to put up these structures? Of course, they had houses, and some houses were decked houses, and these were thousands of years ago. So the thing is that when they put up these structures, to a large extent, they were led. They were led by those who are the guides in nature, who are the who do maintenance in nature. That is the big difference between the structures that were put up long time ago and the structures which many now have. Of course, there are templates to put on structures, but the further effects of what they have put up have not been well considered. And that is the big problem. So you find the so-called cities, where also structures have been put up. You have waste treatment systems. All sorts of things have come in without due consideration on the impacts on the so-called environment. Only much later, when the impact becomes so severe, only then do man or many start considering, oh, what have we done wrong?
Thank you for your answer, Gregory. Again, you mentioned the pyramids there, which is, like many people, is still a mystery, how they were built. People are still trying to work it out. They said if we had to build it ourselves now, we can't do it even today, which sounds shocking. And they're still trying to work it out. How did they build it thousands of years ago? they didn't have machines like we have now, and even we are saying it could be difficult for us today. So, and of course, when they've explored these pyramids, they've found, tunnels and things which people will be wondering, oh, what was the purpose of that? So I want to ask you further on this just now, Gregory, because I want to just say a few things to the listeners. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is man and the environment. Man and the environment. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939641958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. So, Gregory, we talked you just started the program, and some interesting things we've talked about how man should work in this environment, in his environment, you can say, and you said even example of Egypt with the ancient civilization where they could build things, even a big scale, and it would be in quotes environmentally friendly. It hasn't damaged anything. Since they have been built, many of them, and not only in Egypt, they built pyramids other places as well, and even you hear stories, in other civilizations that many things were there, which we can't seem to do anything now. So I know it sounds like fairy stories, but I think there's stories like where man could fly on a I can't think of the actual animal right now, but there was a flying sort of bird or something, and man could sit on it and fly. So it's like I know it sounds like fairy story, but those things, let's say, there are legends about these things, and although I don't want to, as I say, divert too much, because we can say in the science fiction, like Star Wars film, they have people flying in space in cars. You can go anywhere basically, or within towns, even cities. They're doing that. So similar things, basically, whether in the future or whether in the past, those things seem like man's dreams of doing things, or man's activity, you can say, with the environment. And of course, in the films, nobody cares about the environment in that time. But obviously, if these things are real, it means it is feasible. We have to find a way to live on this earth, in harmony with the animals, with the climate, with the I was going to say just nature, basically, but landscape and the world that we live in. So, Gregory, you did mention there about some nature sort of guides. I think you mentioned that, if I remember. So, and can you tell us more about that, please?
When one reflects that, look at the sort of succession before man came to the earth, the animals were already there. One cannot deny that. There's evidence of that. Before the animals were the plants. Before the plants were stones. Before the stones, there were elements. So it becomes very clear that there were pre-structures before subsequently, through evolution, we are where we now are. And therefore the question should be, how did these structures arrive? How did the structures that we call the elements, by elements, not only that of air, but in the so-called science, there are the units which serve as building blocks. Were they just arbitrary? Of course not. And then the uniting of these bits of building blocks to form compounds, molecules, giant molecules. There must have been a will. There must have been a law. There must have been those whose activities concerns this, and they did the building and the maintenance. And that is why you have our so-called environment. For those who try to venture to the moon has a small environment which is different from that of the earth. Are these things arbitrary? Look at the universe, which we know, which we can perceive with our physical eyes or with the means available to us with our senses. Are they arbitrary? If they were, then they would have been colliding and everything would have been burnt up. Therefore, it is logical and right to say that these things predates the emergence of man. And, of course, there are the forces of nature, which nature itself has been there, such that these forces of nature help in the maintenance, in the balance of movement. And these forces, in quotes, one may refer to as manifesting as beings. These beings are responsible for the maintenance of nature. It is these beings that many have lost the knowledge of, and therefore they consider things to be arbitrary. It has never been so. The oceans are not arbitrary, so also the sky is not arbitrary. Things work in such a logical way. And when man, through the so-called science, studies what exists, what is already there, it only means he's trying to understand the pattern that have been put in place, the laws that govern the operations of that which already exists. So, as long as he deviates from understanding it aright, then there will be problems, such as the problems we now have with the so-called climate change and things of that nature. So there has always been a reference point, a reference architecture. That reference, which we refer to as nature, There has always been maintenance, and these have been on not for one day, not for 1 year, or for hundreds of years, but for millions of years. And since one can acknowledge these things have been available for millions of years, then the question one should ask, who are those who maintain these structures? Therefore, one may successfully say that there are the laws of nature, which laws do the maintenance, not arbitrarily, but those beings who stand at their posts and fulfill the maintenance of nature.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory, or explanation. I started to think that, these beings that you've talked about, they're in the ancient civilizations like Greeks, Romans, even Hindu, basically everywhere in the world, old civilizations, you can call them, they call them little g gods, for the weather, for the harvest, and basic everything you could say related to nature. But in today's time, nobody is doing that, and so, or let's say very few. Well, some religions still have this, let's say, worship. And just first, I wanted to check, Gregory, those beings that you've referred to there in what you just said, are they the same that these, in quotes, old civilizations were worshipping, and maybe they were connected with those beings? Is that the one you referred? Those beings, are they the ones you're referring to?
There are the beings that are responsible for the maintenance of the operations of the objects in nature. Those are the ones one is referring to. The ones which you mentioned are or could be those particular civilizations were able to perceive. There were some who are responsible for the air. There are some who are responsible for the seas. There are some who are responsible for fire. In the different categories, you will find there are beings that does the maintenance. Therefore, you will find that depending on the inner maturity of the different civilizations, they were able initially to perceive the workings of these beings, and they tried to seek their advice. In seeking their advice, they did not wish to disturb the workings because they sensed very intuitively that their workings were beneficial to human personalities. So it depends. There were some who could see at very low level, and there were some, due to their maturity, could see at a very high level.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I think we can now start relating to these, not only the explanation, but just start seeing this, the working of man and nature and environment. Like we've gone sort of not quite a history lesson, but just at least we can connect with what you're saying. Otherwise, people might think, "Oh, this could be just," but we can relate to that because we've heard stories of this, that these, from our past. Now, in today's world, Gregory, we don't do that mostly. We don't connect with these nature beings or beings. We're working with science and just like independent of this. And science is logical and all that. And then this, they call them even fairy tales. This what we have been just discussing about these beings. It's almost like they're looking down on them, that this is just, almost like not real. It's just that's what the people of the past believed, but it's not really real. It's just a story to tell them to sort of. That's the level of the people at that time. So they needed the stories to, learn and grow. But when you have science, you don't need to. The research is done. There's like evidence, and you know that it will work. But as we know, Gregory, is although we have science, it doesn't have answer to everything. We can make something and build something, but how can we, sure enough, after some time, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, you realize, oh, yes, it gave you some benefit, but then there's the pollution, there was something else. And then when it multiplies, in the end, it's hurting or damaging the world in a very serious way. Initially they ignored it, but now it looks like you can't ignore it, except you're willing to have disasters and just live with disasters. So my question now, Gregory, there's too many things here. First, let's say, so Gregory, let's go to the present, how we are now, because we talked about something like the Egyptians and civilizations, how they worked with those beings. But now we are working with science. So my question, Gregory, is, first of all, can we go back? I say go back. Should we try to work, let's say, how the old civilizations work, because that it almost seems impossible to do that? Or how can we sort of, let's say, get back? I'm going to say it's a sort of weird way to say it. Can we get back to nature? Is there a way we can get back to nature, or we just have to accept that we have moved so far away now that we can't do that anymore?
First, there's the wrong impression that many have regarding science. If only they should question themselves carefully and understand what science does. Science, in quotes, or the so-called science, tries to observe what exists. And in striving to understand what exists, it builds a model as representation of that which exists. And if tomorrow it finds that it is deficient and something needs to be added to it, it does so. Therefore, studying that which exists should not make one deny that which exists because of his personal insufficiency. That means those who study science haven't gone deep enough to understand that there are other things which they don't yet know. So it is erroneous to say, oh, we live in the age of science, and that is it. For what is referred to as science are only external investigations of that which are perceptible through the five senses. And these are very narrow, so very narrow range. It doesn't go far enough. And therefore, one cannot use such deficient models to describe nature, which nature had always existed before the arrival of man. So if one gets that very clear, then humility will come, because they will now know that there are others which they don't yet know. Science hasn't created oceans. Neither have they created the earth. Neither have they created the universe. And therefore, on what basis can many now say we live in the world of science? Or because they have observed the effects, the outermost effects of the motions in nature, and they then draw conclusions from that. That would be unwise. Should man wish to learn from nature, there is the possibility of humbly observing the behavior of nature. And having observed enough, then they may dare to take a step forward again, rather than dismiss that which exists, which is what is common nowadays. One cannot say, oh, because we study science, we don't have to breathe in and breathe out. For nature stipulates that for a human personality or a plant to continue to exist, to have that structure and the stability of that structure, and the way that structure will now morph from one structure to another, there must be continuous exchange between itself and the environment. That is common sense. For if there is no exchange, which is the giving and the receiving, that will violate the law of nature, which is that law of reciprocity, the law of reciprocal action. Therefore, it is wrong to attribute almost everything to so-called science. The minute changes that they themselves have observed in the so-called scientific study is helpful for progress, but it is not sufficient. Should many wish to know more, then the idea or the need then arises through one's personal intuition to be able to perceive more than what the five senses can give to the human personality. To be able to go further, that means to move further towards that which are not only earthly, but which are non-earthly, beyond the five senses, works that one has found, such as the work in the light of truth, the Grail Message, puts very clearly in simple terms that the human personality needs for it to examine, not to accept or to reject, but through its intuition to examine so rigorously and come to better conclusion. Then the continuity here, the links which one may have with the different types in nature which are perceptible to the physical senses are fully well established. The links also which are beyond the five senses, the five earthly senses, are also perceptible, not just being imagined. In that way, one builds a structure around oneself. In quotes, one builds a physical environment about oneself here or hereafter. For as we all know, before we make changes to an environment, there is the reflection, there is the thoughts, which thoughts we cannot see or hold with our physical hands, yet the thoughts are there. There is a reflection. And it is these thoughts that affect us in the way in which we respond to challenges, which challenges we find in nature or challenges for our fellow human personalities. Therefore, the way forward must be the combination of that which is which is earthly, and also that which is non-earthly, which one is able to do through one's intuition. How that must be done is clearly elucidated in this particular work.
Thank you for that, Gregory. As you mentioned, dear listeners, you can, as Gregory mentioned, you can, Gregory has referred to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abrushin. And if you want to know further, as Gregory has referred to, that's the knowledge you need to look at. And if you are interested in looking at it, or getting a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, then you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, message, message.com. And you're listening to Blessed Radio. This is the spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And our aim is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message. And the topic we're discussing tonight is man and the environment. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939641958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 004479394158. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also, we are broadcasting on YouTube. You go to youtube.com and then type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, again, the number 1, space, live stream. That's Bless Radio 1, space, live stream. And you can also listen to the recording of the show the next day on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, again, the number 1, then space, Grail Message, and then space, the topic of the show, which tonight is man and the environment. You can listen to our previous shows as well. Gregory, we've talked about nature, we've talked about science, talked about man's, how he acts, and you've given a very clear sort of pointer that yes, we have the five senses, and then we have also this intuition, and which the five senses are for the material world, activity within the material world, you could say. Maybe that's not quite the correct way to put it. Let's say it's active in the material world, but there is this intuition, which is, let's say, non-material, but it works also in the material world, although it's non-material. I think that's probably the easiest way to put it. And it needs to be used as well. And you gave the example how science is really looking at the material world, but really you need this non-material input with as well. Otherwise, you could say we'll be missing in our activity, which we're relying on one. Let's say the world is made up of so many ingredients, but you only use some of the ingredients, then it means you'll obviously not achieve so much as you would when you use all the ingredients. So now, of course, a slightly different question here now, Gregory. With man's activity on the environment, the environment was made through nature before man even came on the scene. So when man's in the environment, Gregory, is nature suffering as a result of man's activity? When, of course, I'm talking when things don't go right, don't work out. So does nature suffer as a result of man's activity? Let's say when it's, I'll use the word negative in quotes, when man's, I'm trying to think of a better word really. When it's, I'm trying to think, when's man's activity is like, I don't want to use the word disastrous, but it's more like, I'm trying to think of the right way to put it. When, let's say non-beneficial, Gregory, when man's activity doesn't turn out to be beneficial, does it harm nature?
You yourself put it succinctly. You said it's not beneficial. Whatever is not beneficial to the whole is harmful to the whole, and when by whole doesn't mean the human personalities alone. There are the human personalities. There are those in charge for maintenance in nature. These currents which man has spun, or the threads which man has spun through his activities, also cause a lot of damage in nature. So the question is nature suffering? That must be answered by the personalities whose thoughts is such that they act without giving due consideration of the impact of their activities. That is always a challenge, and that is always a problem. So you have in some areas, there are some who produce chemicals, and due to one carelessness or the other, this is left to spill all over the place, in which rivers, streams, are being poisoned. Once that happens, that has an adverse effect on not only the people who are present here in flesh and blood, but also on those who do maintenance in nature. Therefore, one should be clear as to how one must form or structure or restructure their life patterns to ensure whatever they do brings benefits.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I've received a question from a listener. It's slightly, let's say, different from what the topic we are talking. I mean, not different from the topic, but it's sort of it's just different to what we are talking about at this moment. But it's not irrelevant. So I'm just going to bring it up to you now. Just 1 second. So the listener's asking, what happens with us as human beings? I think this is what he means. When we die, what's our environment then? So the question is, what happens with us, I'm assuming human beings, when we die? What's our environment then?
Thanks for that particular question. In the earlier part of this discussion, one made mention of the thoughts which we harbor, and those thoughts form part of our environment. When the expression death is used, the question which should strike everyone, what is it that has died? The human personality uses the physical body as a tool for experiencing. Therefore, the physical body is a tool. The physical body was brought into being in the unity of that which is earthly. It grows. Since it came into existence, and we have the core, the genes that had to unite to form this tool, which is referred to as the physical body, that's come into being. Over a period of time, this tool needs to break down, and therefore you hear expressions dust to dust. In the building up of this tool is more like an integration. We have a structure being built. The stability of that structure and how that structure will morph over time before, after a number of years, it will start breaking down again. However, the human personality remains. The question is, where was it before it took over the physical structure which it uses as a tool for experiencing? Where does it go after it has dropped this physical structure? And that is where the good idea of, or the good notion of an environment comes in. The environment which the human personality has built for itself, this environment consists not only of the physical thoughts, but also the the non-physical thoughts, includes one's intuition. These now form the path through which it must travel after the physical body has been dropped in the process which is called death. Because it has, through its activities, built these these structures which are non-physical, it might need to follow that path for quite some time until there is a change on its self-improvement in which further structures will come in place. That is only a very brief model that one may give at this time. For more, many should check very clearly the work in the light of truth, the Grail Message. For there are two basic things there. Light, which light means substance or substantiality. It is the substance that it is used to create structural forms. On the other hand, there is the truth, which truth has always remained the same. And it is this truth which one may also call the laws of creation, or this truth manifests as the laws of creation. So a combination of light and of truth gives you the framework upon which the human personality forms, creates the path and the neighborhood, or specifically the future environment it needs to inhabit when it departs from the earth or when it drops the physical body. There are many who remain in the neighborhood, the nearest neighborhood of the earth. There are many who also move far, far away to other regions. Some of the regions may be denser than what you have on the earth. Some of the regions may be brighter, depending on the purity of one's activities. One either sinks or one rises. This is much that has to be taken in, but gradual reflection will make it clearer and clearer. So the question again, what happens when one drops the physical body? Very simply, the environment which the human personality has built for himself in accordance with the laws of creation or with the laws of nature, that is where the personality will move to.
Thank you for that, Gregory, and the listener for asking this question. It may have seemed it was on a tangent potentially, but it was, it is part of our discussion. So it came a little bit, maybe let's say earlier than expected, because we were focusing on our, you could say, immediate earthly or material environment, and not yet moving so much to the next, you could say, the next world, if I can say that way. So, but thank you for that. Now, Gregory, let's just go back again. Now, these people call them natural disasters or natural catastrophes. What are they? How does that happen, this natural disaster? What is that?
Sometimes it is very hard to understand when man uses the word natural catastrophes. There are always changes going on. There are transformations going on. And this transformation, this sort of, will I say, morphology, when you have that a ripe fruit dropping from a tree to the ground, that is a change. What makes it a catastrophe is how man responds to these changes. There are always changes, great changes or little changes in nature. And it is so well intended through the laws which govern nature. However, it is also possible that man, through his activities, brings certain radiations, which radiations are not yet previously there. And you now have all this coming together to cause sudden changes. Those changes are also catastrophes. Therefore, you will find that there are man-made catastrophes, and at the same time, there are other catastrophes which you find in nature, which are intrinsic to nature. Whenever you have thunder and lightning, these are sudden changes. One may call them mild catastrophes. Whenever you have in the sky, you find a burning star that has come to the end of its existence, those are changes. Sometimes there is the preparation which must have taken quite some time, maybe millions of years, before the energy content is completely used up and you don't see it again. One can also talk of catastrophes on Earth in which the moon attracts water. Sometimes the moon comes very close, or sometimes move far away. It's not a fixed orbit, but it's within an orbit. And therefore, sometimes the waters are drawn high, or sometimes they are low. And any ship that is sailing in the ocean, you will find that there is so much turbulence, which turbulence causes so much to turn the other way, which sometimes we call catastrophes. But you ask the question, what are the natural catastrophes? These are the changes which have come about in nature through the workings of those who are in the maintenance of nature. These are intended, and because there is the need for further improvement in nature. So things do not stand still. Motion is more of a law in creation, and changes are tied to it.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Looks like we're going to be to and froing quite a bit today, or in the rest of the show. So in response to your answer, Gregory, about the question from the other listener, the listener asking about what happens to us when we die, another listener has now asking, or is making this comment and asking a question. So I'm just going to read this out now. When Gregory was talking about what happens to us spiritually when we leave this world, in what environment do we travel to? Was he in fact saying that we have done, if we have done good deeds, then the soul will achieve the benefits of those good deeds, and vice versa? So I'll read that again, Gregory. So is referring to you, but I'll just say it like that. When Gregory was talking about what happens to us spiritually when we leave this world, I and in yeah, leave this world. In what environment do we travel to? Let's start with that one first. Oh no, so let me finish it. Let me finish it. So, in what environment do we travel to? Was he in fact saying that if we have done good deeds in this world, uh, the soul will achieve the benefits of those good deeds, and vice versa?
Again, there's a need for further clarification, for only hints were given. What each personality should try to understand is that when the expression good deeds are mentioned, are these deeds in accordance with their own perception or in accordance with the laws of nature, the laws of creation, through which they themselves came into existence? If it is in accordance with the laws of creation through which they came into existence, then that is an improvement. Therefore, the environment which the spirit, the human, the inner core, the human personality has now formed, the laws of nature will lead it to a lighter environment. From thence, it will continue to improve on its abilities. So it is not just good deeds. There is always a reference structure. There is always a reference law. This reference, again, is nature. This reference, again, is creation. And the laws which is able to advance the improvement of the human personality. So it is not an arbitrary thing and say, I have done good deeds because either one religion or the other has said this, I have fulfilled that. Man is unable to know of this of its own because many have already fixed ideas. If I do this, I will get this. Everything is calculated. Only that which springs from deep within one's intuition, only that which is done voluntarily in support of the whole, like we had in past discussion, one for all and all for one. Only that which is done considering the good of the whole, not only those who are physically seen, but also of all those other beings who are elated when in your activity they perceive the genuine impression which spring from deep within the human personality. That is the good which is referred to. For this strong, genuine intuitive perception, which is required for good upbuilding, to put it in a very mild form, these form the threads. It is these threads which are spun by the human personality. But ask yourself, from whence does the human personality receive this knowledge or receive the energy that it uses or receives of the power that it uses in spinning these threads? Does the human personality consider that the Almighty in the majesty and the radiations that stream out from on high, that is able to exist without that vast distance. There are others who are much higher than himself and who stand at their posts in receiving of these radiations, passing of these radiations through a long chain to the human personality, of which the human personality is able to make use of that which is the power which has been granted to it for personal maturity, knowing fully well it needs to build an environment, which environment should be beneficial not only to himself, but to others, whether physical or non-physical. Those are the good deeds which are referred to, not the very narrow view of, oh, I've done a good deed to myself or to my family or to my tribe or to my nation. Far from it. For nowadays, you may find some people, they say, oh, we require nuclear energy. And we are from a different nation. And they so much pollute the atmosphere. What then happens? That pollution is now carried to other people who, like them, like him, are trying to improve themselves. Hence, you hear expressions, love thy neighbor, which means one should not do something to harm your neighbor, whom, like you, is trying to improve himself or herself. But in cooperation, task can be tackled together. So it is so very clear that which is beneficial and that which is not as beneficial as initially thought. The good deeds which have sprung from deep within persist. They are not physical, although they can be represented in physical terms. But they do exist. The power that streams from on high is able to touch the individual so that she or he may act. More of this can be discerned, can be examined in the walk in the light of truth.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. I just want to check, there was one part of the question which I'm not sure you have responded to, which is the question was, when we die, we enter an environment, and what is this environment? I know there's like a two-part question in it. So that part, I don't know if you referred to that, about where we enter. Yeah, that, what is this world that when we die, what is this?
One carefully had mentioned that the human personality spins the environment to which he himself or herself will have to go. There are different expressions for it, and purposely one did not mention any specific or give any specific, object or noun to that particular environment. But if many allow this thing to in their mind's eye, then they themselves can see the sort of environment which they are spinning. There are many who, due to their activities, become earthbound. That means they so much love the earth, they are unable to break away from it. Although they have lost their physical body, but they are earthbound. So it means to some extent they are able to perceive some of the things happening on the earth because they love it so much and they are unable to live. There are others who, due to their activities, which have been so horrendous and wicked, sink to an environment where people or folks of similar nature gather. Folks of similar nature accumulate and now have the opportunity to air their wickedness. Such an environment one may refer to as hell. For in that particular environment, one will perceive those who are so cunning and are so wicked. In that environment, many who harbor such will remain there until such wickedness drops away from them, then they're able to make progress. There are others who, whilst on it, always reflected very carefully and did the best they could do in accordance with the laws of creation. Those ones go down to a lighter environment. So there are different types. And that was why one withheld saying, oh, you enter this environment. Of course there's the ethereal environment. Of course there's the animistic environment. Of course there's the spiritual environment. But step by step, in accordance with the nature of the question, which again, the title of the topic, the environment. Therefore, in following this pattern, one can now see how we ourselves, through our activities, spin an environment, just as we change the environment here on earth to suit our purpose.
Thank you for that, Gregory. That's a very helpful, I will say, answer, in giving a very comprehensive answer. So thank you for that. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is man and the environment. Man and the environment. You can contact us if you have any questions or comments. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 07939641958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00447939641958. You can again call, text, or use WhatsApp. And also we're broadcasting on blessradio1.com, the number one, blessradio1, the number one.com. Also, you can listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number one, space live stream. And you can also listen to the recording of the show the next day. Also on YouTube, you can go there and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number one, space Grail Message, and then space the topic of the show, which is tonight, man and the environment. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows on their YouTube as well. Wow, Gregory. Okay, again, I'm slightly changing the subject. So, Gregory, on Earth, man hasn't really learned to live in peace with his fellow man, and but I'm not sure this is directly what the question is saying here. It meant, I mean, let me just say the question, and then we can talk about it exactly and discuss it better. So let me say, so man hasn't learned to live in peace on earth with his fellow uh, human beings, and then he thinks of, let's say, looking for traveling to and living on other planets, and I mean, for many reasons, but maybe one of the reasons can be to, let's say, um, um, let's say maybe the Earth's future is not so bright, and maybe he thinks the one way is to find another place to live, so another planet. Um, will that change? Will that help? Let me say, Gregory, by doing that, and will that benefit in any way?
Well, one must first understand when one lives an environment, which environment was already conditioned before the human personality came into it. It was conditioned to suit the beneficial development of the human personality or the human spirit. It is the duty, it is the sacred task to ensure the environment is kept pure, is kept in accordance with the giver of that particular environment, which environment took millions of years to prepare. Here in the world of matter, we have the Earth. Search for all the other planets for conditions which are similar to what we have on Earth. Most of the responses to that particular questions are theories. They don't know and they are not certain. Therefore, whoever wishes to abandon that which have been prepared for millennia, for millions of years, for its use, and what had happened? The inhabitants misusing the environment, which the environment they know, now wishing to go to another environment, which environment they do not know. It is, or we won't say it's foolhardy. You ignore that, you keep it impure, destroy that which has been gracefully granted to you, and then you move away to another environment which you do not yet know. It is typical when man runs away from his environment. But the fact remains, man cannot run away from his environment because he carries that environment with him. The thinking, the sort of thoughts that are saying him remain the same. So, having polluted or having injured this particular environment, which has been graciously granted, what is the guarantee that in another environment there will be there will not be continuity of a systematic destruction of that which he plans to put there? However, the free will is always there. To be or not to be has never been a question, because everyone wants to be. how to be. That has always been a challenge. And that how to be can be found through the laws, or in obeying the laws, or in adjusting to the laws, or living harmoniously with the laws through which they themselves, who wish to be, came into existence. Only that is furtherance.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I've got another question, you could say, on another angle. I mean, our discussion is really can be quite wide, as we've seen. So I'm going to look at another angle. So the question now is, do thoughts play a part in influencing the environment? Yeah, do thoughts play a part in our thoughts? I mean, play a role in influencing the environment?
One would answer, of course they do. Consider, before building up a dam, which dam will form a pool of water, which you refer to as a lake, which lake now affects the vegetation and have an impact on the immediate environment. Before all this happens, do we not first think about it? Therefore, are we going to deny that thoughts do not have impact on the environment? So, thoughts do have an impact directly or in the physical, like one has just stated. But we first reflect over it before we start planning to make changes. That is one way. The other way in which thoughts may have an impact on the environment is one's intuitive thoughts having the impact in the sense that people coming together, thinking along the same line. These thoughts are like threads. These threads affect those who help in the weavings or in the maintenance of nature. And these thoughts having an impact on them, in which before long, many a thing is then woven for the human personalities or for those concerned, and retroactively having an impact on the physical well-being of a particular environment. All these are related. However, a better explanation can be found when examined very carefully in the work In the Light of Truth. For only hints can be given in this short period. As to the details, each personality must be bold enough to examine. So it is not sufficient here to talk the talk, but it is helpful to walk the walk by the personal examination, independent of what one has said or what has been discussed here. In the examination of this work and experiencing, looking what happens in nature, what happens in human lives, comparing, building up, tearing down, rebuilding, until one arrives at a much better picture, which one then holds that picture which gives much clarity than has been discussed in these meetings. That is what is intended.
Thank you for that. Another question, Gregory, about this time. We talked about the five senses and intuition, but what about intelligence? Can intelligence, let's say, deal with life, how we live on the earth and how we act? Yeah, what role does intelligence play? So maybe people who are more intelligent, they're more able to, let's say, do beneficial things, and then I don't really want to make it sound some sort of scientific sort of how can I say, theory or something, but just ask, just simply I want to ask, does intelligence play a role in how we're living our life, in terms of, does it benefit us, give some benefit to us?
Again, these are questions which strike many people. But the question is, what is intelligence? Is this something one has studied over time, intellectually, in this earth life, and has gathered so much information and becomes, in quotes, wise in knowing how to use the information they have gathered? If that is the case, that is what many refer to as intelligence, then ask yourself, there are some children who, when you see their works, their paintings, you ask yourself, these are only 10-year-old, 12-year-old. They have only just started. From when did they have that skill to be able to make provision for such wonderful works? In quotes, what is then referred to as intelligence? One may refer to many of those who are more intuitive. Those who are more intuitive and know how to use the picture which intuition has presented to them. They know how to use it in an intellectual way in order to achieve a particular goal. That is what many may refer to as intelligence. For that which has been perceived intuitively, if not used wisely, or if not used in the sense in which is given, becomes a danger. But through personal experience, many have used that which has been observed, or that which they have been perceived intuitively. They have learned to use it in such a way that it will bring benefit to themselves and their fellow men. If that is what many refer to as intelligence, then it comes to a much higher way of speaking the language. Not many who refer to intelligence as someone who has learnt much, has studied much in universities, and know how to converse, or like some will say, they are very crafty. They know how to hide their intention to the detriment of others. That is what you refer to as politics. And as you very well know, those who know how to hide their intention from the others because they want an advantage, those benefits are very temporal. On the long run, which they themselves haven't considered, they fall short. Would one refer to those ones as being intelligent? So, how intelligence is looked at varies from one place or the other. Therefore, intelligence must be looked at from the point of view of nature, of creation. Which creation made it possible for many a personality to subsist, to live, and to prepare for whatever challenges may come his way. Whatever has put that in place in accordance with the laws which have been in existence, that one may refer to as being intelligent, but not the way the human personality think about intelligence.
Thank you for that, Gregory. We've come to the end of our show, listeners. I hope you enjoyed the topic tonight, man and the environment. And I want to read something from the Grail Message, a little bit different from what we normally read at the end of the show. Gregory, I would like to read from the lecture Ascent from the Grail Message. It's the lecture Ascent from the Grail Message. And earlier in the show we talked about what happens after death, and this one let's say is quite relevant here. And I'm reading not from the beginning of the lecture, so it might seem a little bit strange where I start, but I just thought it's quite pertinent to what we have been discussing today. Whoever imagines that with earthly burial everything is also ended and balanced for him, and Whoever imagines that with earthly burial everything is also ended and balanced for him may turn and go his own way, for he is only trying to delude himself thereby. Horrified, he will come face to face with the truth and will have to begin his path of suffering. His true self, deprived of the protection of his body, whose density surrounded him like a wall, will then be attracted, enveloped, and held fast by what is homogeneous. It will be more difficult for him, and for a long time impossible, to arouse the earnest volition for what is better, which could liberate and help him to ascend, because he is entirely subject to the influence of homogeneous surroundings, which does not carry the kind of light thought that might awaken and support him. He must suffer doubly under everything he has created for himself. For this reason, ascent is much harder than when he was in the flesh, where good and evil dwell side by side, which only the protection of the physical body makes possible, because this earth life is a school in which every ego is given the opportunity for further development according to its free will. Therefore, rouse yourselves at last. The fruit of every thought will return to you, here or there. You will have to taste of it. None can escape this fact. Of what use is it to try and bury your head timidly in the sand like an ostrich to evade this reality? Face the facts boldly. You thereby make it easy for yourselves, for here progress is quicker. Make a start, but realize that all old debts must be settled. Do not expect blessings to rain down upon you immediately, as many fools do. Perhaps some of you have a long chain to expiate, but he who despairs on that account only harms himself, because it cannot be spared and remitted him. Through hesitation, he only makes everything more difficult for himself, perhaps a long time impossible. This should spur him on not to delay another hour, for he only begins to live when he takes the first step. Happy is he who plucks up the courage to do so, for link by link he will be released. He can rush ahead with giant strides, jubilantly and gratefully overcoming also the last obstacles, for he becomes free. I'll stop there, listeners. I just hope you got a taste about, taste, or let's say a small understanding of our journey on this earth and beyond, through this topic of man and the environment. And this reading I just read you from the lecture, is just a portion from a lecture, Ascent. I hope it was not completely out of context for you, but I would advise you to read the whole lecture. If you want to explore the Grail Message, please do. If you are interested in that, I just want to remind you that you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll just spell that, www.grail, Grail, and the message is MESSAGE.com. Gregory, I just want to ask you, is there anything you want to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing them a beautiful week.
Thank you. And yes, listeners, the same from me. I wish you a great week. God bless. We'll be back again next Tuesday with another topic from 6 p.m. UK time to 8 p.m. All the best. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.